Welcome to the CSN3M podcast. I'm Andrew Wade with Case Specific Nutrition. On this channel, we focus on mentoring, mindsets, myth busting, all as they pertain to health and nutrition. Today's topic falls in the category of all of the above. We're doing one special today. The topic that we're going to focus on is actually some buzzwords that I come across on a regular basis in my counseling, and it is the term healthy and then also its opposition, unhealthy. And what I've noticed over the years I've been counseling is I get people that casually discuss healthy and unhealthy foods. And what I tend to say to people is it's kind of crazy. In the United States, we're at a point now where if I asked everybody to list out the 10 unhealthy foods that pop in their head and we cross-referenced those lists, most people would probably have 8 or 9 of the same 10 items. And the reality there is that we've decided that foods are unhealthy based on just cultural assumption. But one of the things I wanted to sort of offer as sort of a new framing or a new mindset today is what makes a food unhealthy? Right? What is something that defines a food as unhealthy? Because in a lot of ways, health is not something that can fall into just one item, right? You being a healthy individual is a result of a complex series of factors, right? How often you exercise, your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, your stress management, your hobbies, your relationships. Health is not just one scone after a stressful meeting. And so with that, it's really hard to say that a food is healthy or unhealthy without looking farther in. When I talk to my clients, a lot of the foods that tend to come up as unhealthy are things like pizza and ice cream. We get pasta as a really common one, cakes and desserts. And what's really interesting is when you group all the unhealthy, quote unquote, foods together, you actually are led to see that they all have some similarities. And really the overall similarity is that they are foods that are not very filling, and so a reasonable portion of them would not satisfy you or get you to the next meal. The other factor is that they're all pretty calorically dense. And so when you think about a food that does not fill you up and also a food that is calorically very dense, what that suggests is that you're going to eat more of it than you need to, and calorically it's going to add up so that it gives you more calories than you need. And one thing to think about is, does that actually make a food unhealthy? Does something that is calorically dense make it unhealthy? Does something that is not filling make it unhealthy? No, it depends on what is surrounding it. I talk with my clients a lot about the idea of unhealthy foods being foods that get lonely, which means that you should never have them by themselves. And I like to give an example of the cupcake. And so give me your ears for a thought experiment here. It's 3 o'clock in the middle of the afternoon, you're at work, you're mentally exhausted, you kind of come off the lunch, you see dinner a few hours away, and you walk past the kitchen and there's a little pile of cupcakes. So you go in and you eat that cupcake, and it tastes delicious, but it's kind of lonely, right? It was just a cupcake by itself. So it starts a desire to snack more and more, or leads you to the next thing that you need, or if anything makes you feel like you're a little bit hungrier so that you end up eating a little bit more a couple hours later. Let's take that same cupcake and have it for dessert after dinner. So you've sat down and you've had a really healthy, balanced meal, some sort of protein source with some veggies and then maybe some sort of grain or starch. You've had your fill of some fluids to stay hydrated, and then afterwards you eat that cupcake. You're far less likely to overeat that item, right? That cupcake is all of a sudden going to be digested with a slow digesting, balanced meal, and as a result is going to be included in the satisfaction that comes from that filling meal. And so something to think about is when you consider a food unhealthy, you have that list in your mind, right? It's almost like there's the list of these are foods that are acceptable, these are foods that are unacceptable. But the reality is, and what I would argue, is that we need to change those names and consider these foods filling versus unfilling. I think that's a better way to look at them. And when we look at a list of the unfilling foods, what we want to recognize is that these foods get lonely, which means they should never be eaten alone. They should be paired with something. I'll give you another fun example that's a little bit less dessert focused. Pizza is one of my favorite ones to talk with clients about, because I have yet to meet a person that comes into my office thinking that pizza is quote unquote a healthy food. But the reality is a slice of pizza is not unhealthy in any way. It has carbohydrates in it, it has a little bit of fats in it, and it's got a little bit of protein in it. if you look at the nutrition facts of a slice of pizza, really calorically, it's no different than eating 3/4 of a cup of rice with a tablespoon of olive oil in it. But there lies the problem. Who here would sit down to dinner to eat a 3/4 cup of white rice with a tablespoon of olive oil and call that dinner? Most people would call that a side dish. And that's exactly the problem. Pizza is not in itself a complete meal. It is more of a side dish than it is an entree. And in the United States, we consider pizza an entree. So what happens, right? We don't have our normal protein source. We don't have our typical vegetables present. So we eat a food that's calorically dense and not as satisfying. So we eat more of it. And so a typical person doesn't eat 1 or 2 slices of pizza. They eat 4, 5, 6 slices of pizza. So then we overeat this item and we deem it unhealthy. But here's the thought experiment. What would happen if you had a grilled chicken salad with your pizza? So you sat down and you ate a grilled chicken salad, nice piece of grilled chicken on it, a bunch of veggies, some sort of nice natural like oil-based vinaigrette dressing, started there, and then went to your side dish, so to speak, your pizza. Chances are you wouldn't be able to eat as many slices. It would end up becoming a side dish like it's supposed to be, which means you still get to enjoy the food, but at the same time, you're left feeling a lot more satisfied. And it's because you didn't leave that food to be alone. You paired it up with something so that it was adequately filling and served its purpose. So there you have it, 2 examples, the cupcake and the slice of pizza, both of which suffer from the same problem. They're categorized wrongly as being unhealthy, when in reality they're just misunderstood. They're foods that are eaten in an isolated format without the presence of other foods that kind of help regulate them or balance them. And that becomes our big overarching realization, is that health cannot be defined by one food, but is instead a balance of a diet. And both of those foods are great examples of things that need to be balanced as a part of a diet. So the next time you catch yourself calling a food unhealthy, which leads to feelings of guilt and pessimism and negativity, causes people to think that they're failing if they're trying to lose weight, why don't we replace that verbiage with filling versus unfilling so that we can recognize the real problem, which is not that you ate that food, but that it wasn't eaten in a way that was properly satisfying and regulating for you as a part of your healthy lifestyle. Thanks again for listening to this week's CSN3M podcast. Please subscribe and share for content updates. For more case-specific nutrition content, you can follow us on all social media. We are Case-Specific Nutrition, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then you can also check us out on our website, casespecificnutrition.com.